Hi guys, it's Mr. Lacer. I'm sorry I couldn't be there today with you guys, but you can probably tell by my voice I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. So what I decided to do was to go ahead and video today's lesson and have you guys work on the lesson without me being there. It's not going to be the same with me not being there with you guys, and I'm going to miss being there with you guys, but I thought that this was the next best thing. I think that we should probably start off with the joke of the day, though. So let's get right to it, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the different landforms that we would find throughout the United States and the rest of the world. That's what our focus is going to be today in class. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, today's joke of the day is, why did the photo go to jail? Because it was framed. Oh, that's a good one. I'm sure that Wesson probably said something like Michael Jackson was the answer, right? Do I know Wesson or do I know Wesson? On this day in history, the very first ever live sporting event was broadcast on radio, and that happened in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The radio station was called KDKA, and it was the very first radio station in all of the United States. So that was pretty interesting for what happened in this day in history. That was all the way back in 1921. There are 12 different types of landforms that we're going to talk about here in class today. What we want to be able to do by the end of today's class is to be able to identify and describe several of these different landforms that are found specifically here in the United States where we live. Some of them are very close by. So let's go ahead and get started and take a look at our very first landform. Our first landform is called a plateau. Now, a plateau is a flat-topped highland with very steep sides. And you can see in this picture, we have a flat-topped highland. I'm just going to color it in here. There's our highland. It's flat on top up here. And it has very, very steep sides, right? Sometimes, because this looks like a table, sometimes they call this a tableland. They are basically areas of high, flat land. Plateaus are usually surrounded by steep rock faces that are called cliffs. That's what this is right here. This is a cliff. Plateaus are on every continent and take up 1/3 of the Earth's land. That's a lot of plateaus. Here's some more pictures of some plateaus in the United States. These plateaus are found out near Colorado, Arizona, and Utah. I want you to notice how we have these raised pieces of land, right? They're pretty flat on top. Each one of them pretty flat on top. And all of them have those steep sides that we called cliffs. Each one of them. I'm going to ask us to pause the video right here on this screen. And I want you to choose one of these photos to draw on your chart in the box that says plateau. I want you to draw a picture of what a plateau looks like. Take a few minutes now, press pause, and go ahead and draw a plateau. Here's another picture of the plateaus out west. Now these are pretty big plateaus. They're big and tall, and they have flat spaces on top, like a table. But the largest plateau in the world is the Tibetan Plateau. You would find it in China. It is 4 times the size of Texas. That's a big plateau. That's it for plateaus. Let's go ahead and check out our next landform. But before we do, let's check and make sure everybody understands what a plateau is. Okay, let's see if you can tell your classmates what a plateau is. Who knows? Raise your hand if you know what a plateau is. Did you say that a plateau is a tall landform that's flat on top? If you did, you were correct. Now, what are the steep sides of a plateau called? Raise your hand if you know that answer. If you said that the steep sides of a plateau are called a cliff, you were right on target. Good job. Let's go ahead and check out our next landform. So our next landform are called the plains. And plains are areas of very flat land. There are two different kinds of plains. There are coastal plains, which are located near the ocean, and they're where the land meets the ocean. And then there are river plains. River plains are where the land meets the river. So it's flat land that meets up with the river, or flat land that meets up with the ocean. River plains have very rich soil, so they are great for growing lots of crops. You will find most big cities are located in plains. This is because it's easier to build houses, buildings, and roads on nice flat land. Check out these photos here. Now, while in the top photo we can see some hills or mountains in the distance, most of the land in the front of the photo is nice and flat. In the picture down on the bottom left-hand side, again, we can see nice flat land. And finally, the picture with the barn on the right is very flat land. Now, this photo here is an image of the most famous plains in the world. These plains are located in Africa. They're called the Serengeti. As I said, the Serengeti is one of the most famous plains in the world. It is one of the most visited and explored places in all of Africa. Blue wildebeests, gazelles, zebras, and buffaloes are the animals that are most commonly found on this African plain. I bet you didn't know this, but plains can also be found on other planets. For instance, we know that the planet Mercury has large stretches of plains. Okay, before we go head on and we take a look at our next landform, let's see what we remember about plains. So, can you tell us what are plains? Who knows what plains are? If you said plains are areas of flat land, then you were right on target. Why are plains good for growing crops? Did you guess that plains are good for growing crops because they have rich soil? If so, that was the correct answer. Good job. Let's go head back and take a look at those pictures of plains from the previous slide. And in the square on your paper, I want you to draw a quick picture of plains. Go ahead and press pause on the video now so you can draw a picture of what the plains look like. Our next landform are mountains. A mountain is the highest landform on the surface of the earth. Mountains are usually found to be cone-shaped with steep sides and pointed tips that are called peaks. Let's take a look at the picture here and see, do we see mountains on here? I see steep sides, cone-shaped, with peaks on it, right? So that must mean that these are mountains. Mountains can be rocky. They can have some trees growing on them. Their sides can be very, very high, and sometimes they're so high that snow will form on their peaks. Mountains exist on every continent and even beneath our oceans. Mountains are made over millions of years and in several different ways. Some mountains are formed whenever volcanoes erupt over and over again. The lava builds up to make a mountain. Other mountains are made whenever two plates underneath the Earth's crust slam into one another. If you're lucky enough to live near the mountains, you know there's something special about them. They provide shelter from stormy weather, a sanctuary for animals and plants, And don't forget the skiing. Notice in the bottom left-hand corner the picture of those mountains. Remember how I said mountains can have trees on them? Those are pictures of the Appalachian Mountains. They are the closest mountains to us in Pennsylvania. Go ahead and pause the video right now and choose one of the images on this screen in order to draw in your mountain space on your paper. Pause the video now. The image that we're looking at right here is the tallest mountain in the world. This is Mount Everest. Mount Everest stands 29,035 feet above sea level. That's a tall mountain. It's found in Asia, near China. Let's go ahead and answer some questions about mountains. Who can tell me, what does a mountain look like? How would you describe a mountain? Did you say that mountains are tall with steep sides and look like a cone and sometimes are pointy on top? If you did, then you were correct. The second question is a true or false question. True or false, mountains are the tallest landforms on Earth. What do you think? Nope, the correct answer is not false, it is true. Mountains are the tallest landform on Earth. If you said true, good job. You chose the correct answer. Our next landform is the vacation space for many people who live in America. It's called the coast. The coast is where the land meets the sea or the ocean. Have you ever been to the coast? If you've ever been to the beach, you've been on a coast. A coast is when the land meets the sea or the ocean. Coastal areas are also known as shores, and sometimes they're called seasides. Coasts, as beautiful as they can be, have it rough sometimes. They are hurt by pollution, oil spills, and garbage from both land and sea. Pollution changes the way a coast looks and is harmful to the animals that live there. Coasts are always changing. This landform is constantly changing each and every day. Waves help to create coastlines. When waves crash onto the shore, they wear away at or erode the land. But they also leave behind little parts of the sea such as shells, sand dollars, seaweed, and hermit crabs. Sometimes these objects become part of the coast too. Let's go ahead and take a look at some photos of the coast. Sometimes the coast can be very, very rocky, like we see in the top picture on the left and the picture on the right. Those are both rocky coastlines. The picture on the bottom is more of a coast like we might see if we went on vacation, with a sandy beach. Go ahead and pause the video here and choose one of these pictures to draw as your picture for the coast box on your paper. Pause the video now. Coasts can be very rocky. This is a picture of the coast in Massachusetts. This lighthouse is known as the Headlamp Lighthouse. It's the oldest lighthouse in the United States. We use lighthouses to warn sailors from rocky coastlines so that they don't smash into the coast. Today, there are hundreds of lighthouses all up and down and throughout the United States. Before we move on to our next landform, let's go ahead and answer a couple questions about coasts. True or false, coasts are always changing. What do you think? Did you say that answer is true? If so, you are correct, right? When the waves crash onto the shore, sometimes they take sand and sediment and erode the beaches and change the way they look. They also deposit things like hermit crabs, seashells, seaweed, and other sea creatures. So coasts are always changing. The second question is, what is an example of something that harms the coast? Do you remember the answer to that question? Did you say pollution or oil spills? Either one of those things definitely harms the coast. Okay, let's move on to the next landform. Our next landform are canyons. This one's my favorite. A canyon is deep cuts into the earth between cliffs and is often carved by rivers over a very, very long time. In a canyon, we will see layers and layers of rock of different colors. Here's some pictures of canyons here. The top picture is a photo of the Grand Canyon. America holds the most famous canyon in the world. In northern Arizona lies one of the 7 wonders of the world, the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is a massive canyon of red rock. At the bottom, the Colorado River runs and has shaped the Grand Canyon for millions of years. The Grand Canyon is over 277 miles long and over 1 mile deep. When you go to the Grand Canyon, you will notice that most of the animals that live there have wings because the canyon floor is far down from the ground. Since it is a national park, any animal living in the Grand Canyon is protected by law. More than 5 million people visit the Grand Canyon each year. Let's go ahead and pause the video and take a minute so you can choose one of the photos here and draw a picture of a canyon in the space on your worksheet. Pause the video now. Here's another image of the Grand Canyon. Remember, canyons are carved by rivers, and in the Grand Canyon, it was carved by the Colorado River over millions and millions of years. Our next landform are valleys. Valleys are low-lying areas between 2 mountains or hills. When rivers flow down the mountainsides and hillsides, it wears away the rock and the soil. Over a long amount of time, the water carves out a big V-shaped hole. These holes get deeper and wider, finally making lowland areas called valleys. Look in this picture here. We can see the V-shaped hole that was cut in between these 2 mountains. This area in here, where the arrow is pointing, is the valley. Pretty cool, huh? It was formed by a river. Let's go ahead and take a look at some more images of valleys. The weather in a valley is perfect for living things. Many of the world's earliest people lived in valleys. They found it easy to live in valleys because there were flowing rivers that made finding water easy for people. It was also easy to find animals. Because of these rivers, the soil is also very healthy in a valley, and the plant life is thick, green, and beautiful. Take a look at some of these valleys here. Go ahead and press pause in the video right now and choose one of these pictures to draw in your box on your paper, in the valley box. Press pause now. Some of the animals that we'll find living in valleys are deer, rabbits, and sometimes mountain lions. Let's go ahead, and before we move to the very last landform of the day, let's go ahead and answer a few questions about valleys. First of all, what is a valley? If you said a valley is a V-shaped area between mountains or hills, then you were 100% correct. Now, if you answered it that way, then you already know the answer for the next question. What shape is carved into a valley by rivers over time? Yep, that's right. It's a V shape. Okay, our last landform of the day is called an island. And here's a picture of an island on our screen. Looks like a good place to visit. An island is a piece of land that is surrounded on all 4 sides by water. There are islands in every ocean and sea in the world. Very small islands can be called islets or cays. The creation of an island can happen in many different ways. There are oceanic islands that are created from underwater volcanoes that erupt and lava builds up into an island over time. An example of this would be Hawaii. We can see a picture of Hawaii in the bottom left-hand corner. There are also islands that are created from tectonic plates of Earth as they move. These types of islands are called continental islands. Australia is an example of a continental island. I bet you didn't know that 1 out of every 6 people living on Earth live on an island. The most populated island in the world is Indonesia. They've got 130 million people who live on Indonesia. There are over 100,000 islands in the world. Let's go ahead and take a look at the largest island in the world. That's right, it's Australia. Australia is not only the largest island in the world, but it is a continent all of its own. Now, before we move on and finish up by answering a couple questions about islands, let's go back and let's draw a picture of an island in the space on our paper. Find the space that says island and choose one of these photos to draw a picture of an island. Press pause on the video now. Okay, let's finish up this part of the lesson by answering a couple questions about islands. First of all, what is an island? What is an island? Did you say an island is a piece of land that is surrounded on 4 sides by water? If you did, you were 100% correct. Good job. Next, what is the largest island in the world? If you said that Australia is the largest island in the world, you were correct again. Great job. Okay, we're going to go ahead and finish up for the day. You're going to notice that in Schoology, I have placed a game in there, a Kahoot game that you can play. It's a Kahoot challenge that you can play on your own about the different landforms. Go ahead and take a few minutes with the remaining time in class to play the Kahoot game where you practice answering questions about these different landforms. Hopefully, we'll see you tomorrow in class.